What's up, guys, gals, and non-binary pals? Welcome to Art by Flan. Today we are doing a piece that I procrastinated on forever. Originally there was much more background and much more detail in that background, but I kept being really intimidated by finishing such a large background, and then I realized, much credit to me, that the background that I originally had was very distracting to the two figures in the front, and so I trimmed it down, and it was much less intimidating, and I finally bothered to finish it. Now, keep in mind, this was after I took like a week to decide what I wanted the background to actually be. I'm not grade A backgrounder over here, okay? And when I do come up with backgrounds, it takes me a while to actually finish them, and they're not that great. But I digress. Moving on to the actual picture. This one was inspired by the Adam and Eve myth. When I was a kid, I remember being very interested in this part of Christian mythology, and I don't know why. You could ask maybe 9-year-old Danny and she could tell you, but I certainly tell you 26-year-old Danny has no idea why she was so interested in this myth. But I was very, very into this story, and I remember going to the doctor's office and they had like this illustrated Bible stories thing, and that's the one I would always, read while waiting on the doctor to show up to fix whatever was wrong with me at the moment. But so when I got older and I was reading more on the myth, I found out the story of Lilith, who was, I think it's in Jewish mythology. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I could probably Google it. You could probably Google it. But anyway, the story of Lilith was that she was Adam's first wife, and she was made from the same earth and dirt that he was by God, and she didn't like the idea of being subservient to him simply because she was a woman and they were made out of the same things. So she was cast out of the Garden of Eden, and she eventually shacked up with an angel, made some demons, whatever. The supernatural thing, if you've seen that, is loosely based off that idea, but I digress. So this led to the creation, in this myth, this led to the creation of Eve from Adam's rib. She was made from man. She was, encouraged to be subservient to him, blah, blah, blah. You know that story. And then, of course, you know how Eve was tempted by the apple, and she, listened to the snake talk or whatever. Anyway, so this is kind of a play on that idea. The idea that Eve is being tempted, but not by a snake, but by Lilith herself. Maybe she sort of sees Eve as a sister, maybe she sort of sees Eve as a lover, what have you, but she's like, hey, check out this sweet, tasty apple God told you not to eat. It's really great out here, not being under Adam's thumb, something like that, And so that's sort of what I depicted here, was instead of a snake or, another allegory for the devil tempting Eve out of the Garden of Eden, we have Lilith herself tempting Eve out of the Garden of Eden with that apple, which historians can't agree. Was it really an apple? Was it a pomegranate? Does it have something to do with the Hades and Persephone myth? We don't know. I didn't look into it that much. I just liked this idea, so I drew it. This piece took me quite a while in both deciding and finally bothering to finish it, and in actual execution, because like I said, I don't draw backgrounds very often, and this one was kind of complex for what I normally do for backgrounds. So I had a lot of trees and bushes where I was just sort of guessing to put placement. I think it looks okay in the end. There was a lot of just fiddly bits that made this piece take a really long time for me to finish, but I finally did, and I'm very happy with the outcome. I think I may have prints available for this in my Redbubble store, which you can find the link for that down below. But yeah, I'm just working on shading the trees, those little fluffy goop blobs I call leaves there, and we're moving on to the bark. It's of course standard procedure. I didn't really do anything special for this piece, but I really liked the concept, and it originally came to me, if you watch my sketchbook tour, I have a piece of Eve that I was working on, but I abandoned because pencil issues, but I have a piece, and that's sort of what inspired me to look up this myth, and then I remembered, the Lilith myth, and so I sort of ran with that. Also, that's not how you shade a rock. You can't tell what any of this stuff is until I put color on it, which makes me really sad. I'm not very good at backgrounds, y'all. Please don't hurt me. Moving on to shading Lilith herself, I wanted more of a raggedy look for Lilith. I mean, she's been cast out of, you know, Eden. Things aren't good outside of Eden. So she's sort of, you know, she's got longer, more unruly hair. I can't draw unruly hair, so she just has really long, luscious hair. And everything about her is sort of darker, more pallid. You'll see later in the colors where she's kind of not as vibrant as Eve is. So yeah, and also I didn't have to draw clothes, and so that's pretty freaking excellent for me. You can't really see anything. I didn't put too much detail into the parts you could see, so hopefully this doesn't get flagged by like YouTube content or whatever, because it's not really adult content. They're not really doing anything, you know, biblical references and what have you. So yeah, it didn't take me long to, it took me less time to shade the actual girls than it did to shade the actual background. I told you that background was intimidating. I didn't want to do it. I thought about cutting it out during the initial planning stages, but I felt like that wouldn't lend as much to the piece. It would take something away. So I'm moving on to Eve here, and as you can see with her design, I tried to keep her hair a little straighter, which is impossible, but she also has a series of flowers in her hair. I couldn't originally decide what flowers, so she just has very large apple blossoms to sort of play on that apple theme that she's got going on in her life. I don't think apple blossoms get that big, or we would have huge apples, but they look cute, and so I stuck with them. I didn't think there was a better flower. Maybe there is that I missed, but just apple blossom seemed perfect for, you know, the whole myth itself. So yep, just adding the finishing touches of shading onto these two, and here I am working on those flowers. Like I said, they're just really, really big apple blossoms. They're not going to grow any big apples because they're in her hair. Kind of look like cherry blossoms now that I look at them. And we're moving on to the shading here. We're just changing the colors up, and like I said, you can see in the color where Eve has a sort of darker, warmer skin tone and colors to her. Lilith doesn't. She has these kind of paler, darker colors that sort of, you know, reflect that she's no longer in the haven of the Garden of Eden. And I realized the colors on the background were a bit dark, like maybe they were in the middle of the forest, because in like paintings and stuff you always see, oh, the Garden of Eden, they're in this bright, happy portion of the garden next to a pool waterfall with lions drinking from it. And I figured, you know, if God was going to put a really evil tree in the Garden of Eden, he wouldn't want to put it where anyone could find it. I mean, yeah, here's this tree in the middle of nowhere, don't eat from that. So yeah, I kind of wanted to put it in a darker, more secluded location where it was, you know, easier to be tempted, sort of that out of God's eye kind of thing. So yeah, just adding the finishing touches on shading here. This piece fought me a lot, but like I said, I'm really, really happy with how it came out. I'm also really happy with Eve's coloring, like just the colors I chose for her, because normally when you Google Eve, you have two choices, blonde Eve or dark-haired Eve, and I couldn't have dark-haired Eve because Lilith was already that stereotypical dark-haired evil woman. So I'm really glad I went for this tanner skin, redder hair Eve. I think it looks really super duper cute. So just adding the finishing touches to the flowers here, and we should be moving on into the finished piece here in just a few short seconds. And here we have the finished piece. If you like what you see, don't forget to click that like button and leave a comment down below. And hey, you can always subscribe for more to get a new video from me in your inbox every single week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye-bye!